Hi, this is Dan McGresty. I want to welcome everyone to the Brady Ware Dealership Advisors June webinar. This month we have Matt Gibson from Protective, who's going to discuss. We're going to do a deep dive into reinsurance and some of the benefits and opportunities to look at when you look at considering or doing reinsurance programs in your dealership. Matt and Protective have some really good structure, and Matt's been with Protective for about 20 years and has a lot of vast knowledge in this area. So we're really excited to have Matt talk to us today regarding reinsurance programs. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Stan, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Well, as you can see on the slide, we're going to talk about dealer participation programs today. And by participation programs, that would include reinsurance, retro programs, dealer-owned warranty companies, etc. And there are a lot of interesting things going on in the auto industry. We have disruption to the retail model. There's shifts in consumer mobility preferences, the role of manufacturers, the list goes on. But one area dealer groups, in particular dealer principals, may be less focused on is their participation program and their positions within the participation program. And primarily as a result of President Trump's 2017 Tax Act, changes impacting dealer participation programs, they're here. And we're finding that dealers and the executive management at dealerships may not be as aware of the changes the Tax Act has on our industry in this space as they should. And by the way, this is when I need to remind everyone that I nor Protective provides tax advice. So please always consult your tax professionals when it comes to those matters. If I don't bring that up, I get an electric shock. So moving on, we're going to talk, what do we mean when we talk about participation programs? So participation programs are basically a means for a dealer group owners, possibly key employees, to develop a structure and a program that will allow them as shareholders to participate in the same profits or losses associated with the F&I income provided by the dealership group. More or less what that means is this provides dealers an opportunity to enjoy the same profits that insurance companies have enjoyed for decades and centuries even. So in the industry, folks have a habit of generally referring to these programs as reinsurance. But a bit later, you'll see that that's not entirely accurate. There are many options for dealerships to participate in the profits and losses associated with the F&I business that's produced right there in the F&I office. And while participation programs vary greatly by product type, administer, insure, etc., generally they can be classified into three different categories. The first would be retrospective programs, or retros as they're commonly referred to. Also, you would have your reinsurance, which would consist of CFCs, or controlled foreign corporations, as well as NCFCs, which would be your non-controlled foreign corporation options. There's also a fourth option out there called the dealer-owned warranty company, or DOWC. This was invented by U.S. Warranty back in the 70s, and as of 2 years ago, full disclosure, was acquired by Protective. We could also talk about your self-insured programs. There's some Indian domiciled programs out there, but for today's purposes, we'll omit these less likely options. So as you can see, there are a breadth of participation programs out there and available to dealers. And to ensure that you're leveraging the right participation program, we're going to spend some time at a high level to talk about the most popular types of programs that fall under the realm of participation. And again, we talked about, we're going to get into more detail on the retro programs, the CFC and NCFCs, and also the DOWC. So again, I just want to point out this is a high-level overview, just really intended to help you understand the differences between the options. Obviously, every provider, including our company, has unique differences between the options you see here on the slide. So first, we're going to talk about retro programs. This is reinsurance light, if you will. This is an opportunity for dealers who otherwise wouldn't qualify for reinsurance due to perhaps reduction. Maybe they don't sell enough product to justify the expense that goes with reinsurance. So who would this be for? This could be for your smaller independent lots. This could be for people who are in the specialty side of the business, selling RVs, marine, etc., where the margins might be kind of thin. The retro program is very nice because there's no risk to the dealer. There's no capital outlay required. There's no annual operating expense. There's no capital contribution. So again, this is really reinsurance light. We'll talk about the particulars of the retro in terms of, if you refer to the slide, the obligor. Obligor means at the end of the day, who's obligated to pay these claims. And in this case, the obligor on retro programs is going to be the administrator or the insurance company. It would not be on the dealer to make sure that those claims were paid. Even if the retro went upside down and wasn't making any money, the dealer would not be on the hook for paying those future claims to keep their customers' cars fixed. It would be on the insurance company. As I touched on a moment ago, the startup costs are typically none. Now, again, this can vary by provider, but in my experience, generally there are no there are no startup costs considered, nor are there any annual operating costs. Retros will, as I mentioned a couple times already, vary based upon the provider, but it's very common that these programs will have certain bogeys or triggers that a dealer would need to hit, meaning you have to write X number of policies a year to get a 100% payout, meaning we're going to give you a check based upon how your service contracts have performed in terms of the claims that have come in, as well as the investment income that the premium from those policies have generated. And if a dealer is able to hit the top tier of those production requirements, they would get a check, as I just mentioned, representing the experience based upon the underwriting profit, which again is more or less premium, less claims. That's your underwriting profit, plus the investment income that is generated. The money is traditionally issued as a check. Most retro programs will issue a check on an annual basis. Again, some providers may do it as often as quarterly. But for tax purposes, not an ideal program. So annual retro payments are generally going to be ordinary income to the dealer or the dealership. The reporting with the retro program, this is going to be very similar for all the programs. Administrators these days do a wonderful job with reporting on the actual experience in the retros, from all of the policies that are sold in terms of a production count to the actual premium that is produced, the incurred losses, etc. All will be detailed on different retro reports, session reports, and annual books and records. Moving on to the next slide, we're going to now talk about reinsurance. We're going to talk about controlled foreign corporations. We're going to talk about non-controlled foreign corporations. But this is reinsurance, and this is where you have to pay to play. This is why you wouldn't want a dealer with very small production to participate in a controlled foreign corporation or non-controlled foreign corporation, because as you'll see, there are startup cost considerations here. It's going to vary, but typically to form a controlled foreign corporation, it's approximately $5,000. Now note, that's not a $5,000 fee, pardon me, similar to purchasing a stock. You have to put some money down, and that is the same case here. The $5,000, the startup costs, that's the dealer's money. Again, we have to capitalize this because truly this dealer is forming an offshore controlled foreign corporation. It's going to also have additional operating costs. The dealer will need to pay somebody to provide the books, records, and taxes for their controlled foreign corporation, meaning balance sheets and income statements and an expense ledger. And also, it's going to have to detail the investment returns. So clearly that is not going to be done for free, so the dealer will have to pay for annual operating expenses. This too will vary. Generally, you're going to see it in somewhere between $5,000 to $10,000. The investment income earned, the dealer gets to keep 100% of the investment income earned in his controlled foreign corporation. As far as touching the money, distributions and taxations, there's two different ways to get your money out of a controlled foreign corporation. The first and most popular way to get it out is to take a dividend. And a controlled foreign corporation, upon its inception, is going to make an election called a 953D election, okay? And this is the shareholder raising his arm in the air and saying, hey, U.S. government, please tax me. I want to be taxed as a U.S. citizen. And that's a good thing, because if you apply for that 953D election, you can then make what's called an 831B election. And I know that might sound Greek to everybody, but that's very important, because that 831B election means that you will only pay tax on your investment income. And we make money two ways in all of the programs we're going to talk about today. Just remember, we make money two ways. From our underwriting profit, which again, to keep it simple, is the premium that's remitted, less the claims that are paid out. What's left over is called underwriting profit. And when that premium is first remitted, it's going to go immediately to a custodial account, meaning it's managed by investment managers, and it's going to generate investment income. That's the second component. So we make money in all of these programs by underwriting profit and investment income. So when you take that money out as a dividend, because you've made that 953D election and the 831B election, you are going to receive what's called qualified dividend tax treatment. That's the best tax rate out there going. It is comparable to long-term capital gains. Both are 20%. And then you add an additional 3% and change from Obama's healthcare issue that came out years ago. So approximately 23% of tax. Alternatively, if a controlled foreign corporation has run its course and it needs to be liquidated, that would also come out at 23%. It would not be a qualified dividend. It would be considered long-term capital gain. What you'll have here in controlled foreign corporation will be monthly session statements. As we referenced earlier, you'll have somebody prepare the books, records, and taxes. So on frequency determined by the dealer, they'll receive those income statements and balance sheets, as we mentioned earlier on the call. One final component to mention here: to receive the 831B election, the annual premium that's actually ceded to the controlled foreign corporation needs to be under $2.3 million. Now, note, that's a sliding scale. It used to be a few years ago, it had to be underneath the $1.2 million of annual premium to qualify for the 831B election, which again is tax. You only pay tax on your investment income. Today it's 2.3, in a couple of years it'll go up to 2.4. It's on a sliding scale, but I want to reference, to get that 831B election with your controlled foreign corporation, you do need to stay underneath that $2.3 million. Another form of reinsurance is the non-controlled foreign corporation. This is different in a few ways. This is actually a multi-group shared risk reinsurance company. So what does that mean? That means that a non-controlled foreign corporation has to have a minimum of 10 different shareholders, 10 different dealers that may not have ever met before, to qualify as a non-controlled foreign corporation. Now, there's a handful of other covenants that have to be in place for a non-controlled foreign corporation or an NCFC to get some of the advantages this program has to offer, and we'll talk about in a moment. But the shared risk component is certainly one of those components of the NCFC, and that means that the claims from one dealer's position within the company, if they exceed and blow through all of their profits, and that one dealer's position is negative, those losses will be applied to the profits of the other dealers within the non-controlled foreign corporation. So it is a multi-dealer shared risk environment. Okay, and why would they do that? Why would any dealer do that? Well, the answer is simple: for the tax deferral. The non-controlled foreign corporation, or NCFC, has historically been wonderful as far as tax deferral. Traditionally, the dealer would pay a 1% excise tax to cede their money to the NCFC, and then they don't pay any tax until they repatriate the money or bring the money back home. Now, we're going to get into it in slides down the road here. Currently, there is a lot of concern with the NCFC program based upon Trump's Tax Act that came out at the end of 2017. We'll get into that detail in a moment. But as I mentioned, historically, for tax deferral purposes, think of the NCFC almost like a 401k plan. Again, the obligor, similar to a CFC, it's the administrator, meaning if the NCFC, God forbid, should go completely upside down, the administrator would step in and pay those claims and make sure that the customer is taken care of. Startup considerations, it will vary, but this actually is, you are buying stock in a company, and it can vary anywhere from $2,500 all the way up to $15,000. And again, not a fee, it's just the startup costs. The dealer will receive 100% of the investment income generated by the non-controlled foreign corporation, similar to the CFC. Distributions and taxations are different though here. A non-controlled foreign corporation does not make the 953D election. It does not make an 831B election. So to take a dividend out of your NCFC position, sure, it's an option, but from a tax point of view, it'll be at ordinary income, so not ideal. So the other way to take your money out of an NCFC is to actually sell your stock. Cash in your chips, and when you sell your stock, you will receive long-term capital gain treatment, which is the ideal way to repatriate your money if you're in an NCFC. Next, we're going to talk about DOWCs, and this is Dealer-Owned Warranty Company. Note that the DO does not stand for Dealer Obligor. The obligor is actually the DOWC itself. This is a dealer-owned warranty company concept. This is new to a lot of people. Based on recent conferences, I can tell you this is the hot participation program in the industry right now. However, it's not really new at all. The DOWC was brought to market over 40 years ago by U.S. Warranty Corporation. So why is this model getting so much attention? Well, the biggest reason, it has tax deferral similar to the NCFC, which we just talked about, but it has the cash flow similar to a CFC. So in an NCFC, we discussed the tax deferral. One of the negatives of an NCFC is that it's trickier to get your money out of your NCFC position, because we talked about it's a multi-dealer participation program, and because of that, they have a board of directors that meets once, maybe twice a year. And because of that, the board needs to approve every dollar that comes out of the company. So if a shareholder wants to sell their shares and get their money out of the position, that has to be approved at a board meeting that may not be for 6 months or 11 months down the road. So from a cash flow point of view, the NCFC is not ideal. But again, it has served people well for decades as far as the tax deferral. On the controlled foreign corporation, those are owned by the dealer and not multi-dealers. Traditionally, it's just the dealer that owns that company, and when there is money available to be taken out, the dealer can request it and have a check in their hands generally within 5 business days. So again, the DOWC has been very attractive because it has the advantage of being able to take the cash out when it's available and having that in the dealer's hands within a matter of days, but it also has the tax deferral for an extended period of time, very similar to the NCFC model. So full disclosure here, I have to point out, U.S. Warranty Corp was acquired by Protective over 2 years ago, largely because we felt that this model was truly a unique option in an industry and a marketplace where there aren't a lot of differentiators. Years and years ago, decades and decades ago, not everybody could offer reinsurance to a dealer. Today, it's an expectation of a dealer that his F&I provider have participation options. The dealer-owned warranty company is very unique in that sense, and because of that, made a tremendous amount of sense for us to go out and acquire it. And although it seems new to a lot of folks and it hasn't reached certain marketplaces, it's not because that program went there and failed. It just hasn't been presented to a lot of markets in the United States, which again makes it very attractive. But again, full disclosure, Protective did acquire that company just over 2 years ago. Another option for dealer groups would include self-insured. Self-insured has also been around for decades, and self-insured is almost the opposite of a non-controlled foreign corporation, where we talked about the non-controlled foreign corporation is ideal for tax deferral and not necessarily ideal for cash flow. The self-insured program is the opposite. It is as good as it gets as far as cash flow. The dealer, to keep it simple, more or less, the customer pays for the policy, the dealer keeps the money and simply remits the administrative fee to the administrator. So the cash flow is superior. However, it's highly tax inefficient in the sense that the dealer will pay tax in full upfront at the point of sale. So an attractive model that's out there. I just want to make sure that we did touch base on it because there are many dealers out there that love that program, even though it does come with a significantly higher tax rate. So that's an overview of the most popular models that we have out in the industry these days. I think it's important that we spend a little bit of time talking about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and how that will impact not just the NCFC, but all of the models. the NCFC certainly has some additional impacts that we will get into in just a moment. So we talked about this went into effect end of 2017, and it actually does affect all programs because the corporate tax rate is now fixed at 21%, which is a great thing because it used to be a range based upon the size of your program that could be anywhere from 15 up to 40%. And most of the programs out there tended to be more towards the 40% than the 15%. So now that it's fixed at 21, that's really good news. As I mentioned, there is additional impact on the NCFC space. And while legislation was designed to reduce income tax for individuals and corporations, it affects the selection of participation programs for dealers in the NCFC. So we won't get into all the detail here, but the language within the Tax Act has changed some of the requirements up for those non-controlled foreign corporations to continue to be considered non-controlled foreign corporations. And there's a lot of uncertainty as to what steps need to be made to continue as an NCFC, and those that have made those steps, if those steps will be sufficient. Many feel that they have made changes that will allow them to continue as an NCFC. Some have not. Some have actually had to close their doors. So this is a thing. This has actually impacted our industry. So the NCFC, again, this has served dealer principals well for decades and decades. But again, the uncertainty may want some dealers to take a closer look. So I'm not a tax advisor, but I've certainly attended conferences with tax experts from big firms, and many advisors really do foresee an issue with the NCFC structure as the tax law is written today. It's important to note that this Tax Act is out there. It's very important that everyone understands it. Most dealer group execs, however, are unaware of the impact of the new tax law. So that's why it's important that we mention that on this call and why we talk about it now. Because these changes driven by the Tax Act have the potential to change really how a dealer is going to continue to profit from his program. And if you look at the pie chart, when we ask execs if they were aware of the Tax Act and how it may impact their NCFC structure, you can see that from the pie chart that just over 10% were aware of the potential changes and impact it could have on their NCFC, which is remarkable. So I say it's remarkable because you think that that would be something front of mind for most dealers, but you also have to keep in mind that these dealers are very busy people with a lot of spinning plates, just trying to sell cars and possibly, get that next dealership. So these are very, very busy folks, and it's not uncommon for participation to not cross the radar until they're having a review, if you will, with the administrator to talk about their participation programs. But that might be an annual event. So again, one of the reasons we want to be able to have calls like this is just to broadcast and create awareness that if the dealer is not aware of the impact of the Tax Act, specifically on the participation programs they're in, they really need to be. So tax law changes can have a real impact on participation programs. We've certainly just covered that. And when the tax advantages are reduced or changed or even eliminated, you have to consider the impact to these dealers, these automotive dealers, in terms of what participation programs, what benefits does it bring or what does it minimize? Because it could jeopardize wealth building opportunities and potentially cut off some cash flow that those participation programs have provided in the past, or even jeopardize the investment portfolio for individuals or families, particularly if some of the Tax Act impacts on the NCFC space come through. This could pose a serious challenge to estate planning for automotive dealers. So what can you do? Well, obviously we've talked about where the issues are and why you should care, but really what should you do? And I'm not a tax advisor, but you need to consult your tax professionals. You need to seek the advice from financial advisors and attorneys, as you always should if you're a dealer, regarding all of the different options that you have and all the different things you have going on in the dealership. But this particular Tax Act needs to have a very close look-see from those dealers' trust, meaning the tax advisors, attorneys, and financial advisors, just to get a comfort level of the position that they're currently in. And then they need to know their options. As I mentioned, often the largest and most innovative of dealers aren't necessarily putting reinsuring or reviewing alternative reinsurance or participation programs high on their to-do list. So after a dealer develops an understanding of the options available, they can make adjustments, but they need to make sure these adjustments and changes align with the financial objections of that dealer principal and his business. So next steps. What are your next steps? Well, we've adjusted the challenges driven by the Tax Act and the impact on potential impact on the NCFCs. We've provided an overview of the other options that are available out there to dealers when it comes to reviewing participation programs. So again, what are the next steps? Well, first, now's the time to take a look at your current participation program. With the new tax law, it's in place now. It went into effect January 1st of 2018. There's no reason to delay taking a close look at what you currently have. And again, take a look at what you have and review that based upon your financial goals. Goals change every year. They change daily sometimes. So make sure that your goals are aligned with the program that you're in. And then take into consideration, how important are things like flexibility and control of the program you're in. You want to take a look at the risk and reward balance. What are the needs of your organization? Which participation program might meet those needs best? The participation program you signed up for 5 years ago may not be the best program to meet your needs of today. So again, you want to keep all these things in mind when taking a look at not just your current program, but alternative programs that are out there. So your next steps, again, define your objectives, meet with your tax and financial advisors, and then develop a plan. Plan that can start with, reviewing, as we just discussed, your current option and other options out there. A review process, maybe it involves creating an RFP to put out to administrators, and that'll help you get a more detailed, customized view of what alternative options are out there for you. So the takeaway, we've provided a top-line overview of dealers' options for participation programs. We've identified the changing environment largely driven by the tax law changes. We've discussed the steps involved in reviewing your options and making the right decision. So what's the takeaway? Again, work with your trusted sources in the form of your current F&I providers, your tax advisor, financial advisor, etc. Make sure your objectives are aligned with your participation program and act now. That tax law is in place. It's not going away. There's no reason to delay here. And doing this, it's going to help a dealer and their business better ensure they're prepared for their current needs of today and as well as in the future. So we at Protective, we're happy to help, no matter where you may be in the process of reviewing your participation program. I'm happy to assist, and I can be reached at the number you see on the screen here, as well as at the email address provided as well. So again, thank you, Stan, and thanks to everyone for their time. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope you found this informative.
Thank you, Matt. This has been really good stuff. I think you can see how even with the Trump tax law, this is really providing even more opportunities to really get to know make sure you understand your reinsurance program and the benefits that it could do for your dealership. And I really appreciate your time today, Matt. And if anybody has any questions, you'll see Matt's contact information. Feel free to reach out to him. Protective is a great company. We have many dealers that use their products, and they're good folks. So feel free to reach out to them. And I hope to see everybody next month in July when we go deal with some state and local tax issues out there, mainly the Wayfair case. We'll be discussing. So I hope everyone see everyone in July. Thanks again.